Good evening. Welcome to today's Tropics for June 29th, 2021. Please note, I am not a meteorologist, and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about. And for decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or local officials. So today I'm looking at Invest 97L. This one's been around for a few days, but now it's been marked by the National Hurricane Center as now Invest 97L. It has 40% chance to form in the next 48 hours and a 60% chance for them to form in the next 5 days. And it's probably going to track towards the Windward Islands, but we'll have to see if it's as a tropical cyclone or if it's more of or as a wave axis. So if you look at the satellite imagery, you can see it's clearly starting to organize a little bit, and it's got some decent kind of convergence around it, as you can see with these two bands that are trying to wrap around the closed but kind of broad and elongated center. Uh, we couldn't quite see really today where it was because there's a lot of mid-level cloud debris in this area, and that has obscured the visible imagery and hasn't really allowed us to see where the little center is getting going, and is also kind of not letting us see it on the shortwave infrared imagery. However, in the past couple hours, we actually had a very nice ACE-CAP pass that pretty much went over the center of Invest 97L, and there is an elongated low here, but it is closed quite clearly, and it's actually a bit more well organized than I thought it would have been. And yeah, it's definitely closed pretty well, uh, and that is because kind of those it's more of a big monsoonal area right now, so it's had the support of some of these kind of monsoonal westerlies, and that has allowed it to be closed and to generate some spin, even though it's pretty far down. It's only around 8 degrees north, but it has managed to generate something with the convective activity it's had. And if you kind of notice where it is, it's actually under this area of convection. And that means it could try to tighten up tonight during tonight's diurnal maximum for convection, which would be at sunrise. And we could see if it tries to concentrate itself enough to become an actual tropical cyclone. That is what the GFS model is suggesting. And it seems that with the trends right now, we kind of have to lean a little bit towards that model, which is more bullish than the European model. Before we look at that, though, I've got two things to look at. So first off, let's look at the infrared imagery. So there isn't any like really deep convection, but it's got a good structure. It's got these two bands, and it's got this relatively deep, but not the deepest I've ever seen convection over that center. So it is trying to organize, but if it wanted to be a tropical cyclone by tomorrow morning, like the GFS model has said, it's probably going to need some more of that getting going. It does have the diurnal maximum approaching on its side, but we'll see if it's actually able to do that. Now, before we actually get into like the model war kind of stuff, we do have some higher confidence of some of the conditions, and kind of the two that are really important here are the upper level winds and the lower level winds, because those are going to be very influential in terms of what what Invest 97L can do and how favorable conditions are. So let's first look at the 200 millibar wind. So that's the upper level wind. And you'll notice that the kind of tut cell that usually kind of drapes down in the Caribbean and shears pretty much everything at this time of year is pretty much missing in action, because there is an atmospheric Kelvin wave that's passing by, and that's kind of allowing for the tropical easterly jet further east to kind of push westward. And this is basically what it does here after the passage of Invest 95L into the Caribbean. And so you got a lot of upper ridging here, and the tut cell kind of gets pushed up north and weakened. So it doesn't seem that that's going to be an issue. Now, there might be a bit of westerly shear because of how fast the low level flow is, but we're not going to see a storm that is getting shredded by very strong southwesterly shear like you'd expect for something getting into the Caribbean uh, at this time of year. However, something that is a lot more in line with climatology is very strong winds at 850 millibars, and that is kind of like the Caribbean low-level jet, which pretty much peaks at about this time of year. And tropical cyclones really do not like this because if they start going faster, it's hard to organize well. And if you have a weak tropical cyclone in this area, they tend to fall apart and become wave axis or a wave axis as it can't get westerlies at such a high speed. So this is going to be something that Invest 97L is going to deal with. And it seems that as a result of this, if it doesn't really get going in the next 2 or 3 days, uh, once it starts picking up speed on approach to the Caribbean, it's probably not going to have a very good time closing off. And so chances seem low if that ends up happening. Again, it does seem that it's starting to get itself together a bit earlier, but it will end up having to deal with this, which could still disrupt it in other ways, such as uh, introducing a little bit of westerly shear and possibly making it outrun some of the favorable conditions it has. And as a result of this, it does have sealing, as you would expect at this time of year. Now let's look at the kind of two opposing uh, model solutions, even for the near term. So here is the GFS on Thursday morning. So again, it has the GFS has 97. I'll have a very good diurnal maximum. So that means it pretty much makes it a tropical cyclone tomorrow morning. That's pretty bullish. I'm not quite sure if it will uh, get itself together that fast, but that gives it time to kind of start getting itself together in the main development region before hitting the Caribbean, so that it's able to kind of track into here and survive, not thrive, but kind of survive in the Eastern Caribbean rather than kind of getting shredded up by the low-level jet that you'd see. So here it is probably a mid-grade tropical storm. So I think this is about as strong as we could see it. This is kind of like the ceiling, I'd say, for this time point. So if things go really well for it, we might see something like this. On the flip side, the European model has been pretty bearish with Invest 97L. It might develop it, but it doesn't really develop it too well. Unfortunately, a lot of the Euro model data is restricted, so we can't quite see what it does. But I'm assuming that it doesn't really get itself together with the diurnal maximum, so it keeps trying to develop, and almost does probably on Thursday. However, it's still pretty weak and barely has westerlies even at this point. So once it starts hitting the Caribbean, it opens up into a wave and kind of is never heard of again, basically, after that. So I think if things really don't go well for it, this is kind of the floor for it. But I do think I would lean a little more towards the GFS. I don't think it'll be this strong, but it seems that it'll be something in between, but kind of leaning towards that. So we might have possibly like a minimal tropical storm into Thursday morning. But again, we'll have to watch the near-term trends because those are going to be very, very important to see whether it can survive in the Eastern Caribbean, kind of get it further west, or if it maybe falls apart before then. Now, finally, let's look at the steering. Unfortunately, we don't quite know where the Lowell Center is going to gel, assuming it does. So we don't know exactly where we're starting from. Luckily, this ace cap pass kind of gives us a better idea. But again, it's not a well-defined Lowell Center, so I would caution against taking stuff like model track verbatim at this point. But it's likely to be under a strong ridge, which is one reason it's moving so fast. And it will continue generally in the west-northwest track, probably picking up speed as it gets into the Caribbean. And once it gets into the Caribbean, it's probably going to pick up even more speed, 20, 25 knots. And then this trough down here will try to drop down and could perhaps could weaken the western part of the ridge and cause Invest 97L to kind of turn a bit more to the north. This has actually trended stronger, so we'll have to see if it continues to do so and if it becomes more relevant steering feature. But it's kind of hard to know right now, and of course, I kind of do have to note that the GFS has a bit of a northward bias, so it might not be quite this far north, but there's a lot of variables such as how strong this trough is, how strong Invest 97L is, because if it's a bit stronger, it'll probably go a bit more north, and if it's weaker, it'll probably go south. There isn't any kind of special flow that goes against that right now. So, again, it's kind of watching near-term trends for the steering and the strength and, what goes on in the Caribbean. But we'll have to see what it does, and hopefully we'll know a lot more by tomorrow or Thursday, and then we can get a better idea of the track, and we'll have a better idea of what to expect probably further out than this weekend. But regardless if it forms or not, we're probably going to have at least a strong wave tracking into the Windward Islands or generally the Lesser Antilles here. So we there are probably going to be at least some impacts from there with rain, as you see with any kind of strong tropical wave or weak tropical cyclones. And on the north side, because it'll be picking up a lot of speed, there will likely be some pretty gusty winds on that north side. Not really on the south side, but on the north side, you might see those gustier winds that could cause damage, especially if it turns out being a stronger cyclone heading into the islands. There's a lot of uncertainty still, though, but hopefully this will be ironed out in the next couple of days. And by then, again, hopefully we get a better idea of the forecast and the kind of impacts to look out for. Otherwise, there's a whole lot going on in the Atlantic right now. It seems that Invest 95L will not end up developing, and instead may try to aid Invest 97L, but itself it probably won't develop and won't cause any impacts except for the normal strong tropical wave kind of impacts as it heads into the Lesser Antilles. If you have any questions, comments about my video, please let me know. Thanks for watching.